Hello underachievers, I have not filmed a proper YouTube video since March. Do I look different? I got a haircut. And my teeth have moved just inside my mouth. They've not gone anywhere. I got Invisalign. I need to make you guys aware of something. It's super duper really important and very dangerous. I released a brand new song. It's called I Know Better, and you can stream it now. And what I would say is that it makes you want to shake your ass, but in a depressed way. But it's fun. I think you guys would like it. I think you should listen to it. Stream it below. So, on to transgenderism, the transgender agenda. How did I fulfill it 5 years ago? On the 14th of August 2017, I came out to every single person in my entire life. That's not true, but I came out to most of them. My method of coming out was by making a Facebook post saying that I was trans. And it wasn't just, hey, I'm trans. We'll get to what I actually said later, but I feel like I should fill you in first. So, I knew something was up in terms of my gender and my body my entire life. When I was 5 years old, I would tell kids on the playground that my name was Alex and that I was a boy. I would tell my brother that I was a boy. I would put Play-Doh down my pants and use it as a packer because I felt like a boy. There was a lot going on, and, you know, most of my life, I've looked the way that I do now, with short hair. And I was incredibly transgender. If I grew up nowadays, I would be diagnosed from birth. Unfortunately, my parents didn't know much about being trans, but fortunately, they were always very accepting of whatever I wanted to do in regard to my self-expression. So, you know, I was allowed a boy haircut. I was allowed to wear boy clothes. And for the majority of my life, when I was living under my parents' roof, strangers would assume that I was a little boy, and my parents would have to correct them. But just because all that stuff happened does not mean that I came out in a timely fashion. I am currently 23, and I came out at the age of 17. I came out 4 days before my 18th birthday. Why did I wait so long? If I was packing at the age of 5, why did I wait so long? There are a good amount of reasons. And I'm not gonna go through all of them, but you know, the classic happened, where as a kid, you're chilling, and then suddenly you get older, and everybody starts bullying you because you look like a little boy. So that happened. I would say that is the biggest reason why I didn't come out for so long, because up until the age of 13, I was happy just doing my thing, just having short hair, looking like a boy, feeling like a boy. I hit senior school, and kids told me that I should change, and they kept reminding me, hey, you should change. Your hair looks bad. Why have you got boy hair? You should get girl hair, is what they said. Not verbatim, but kind of the same thing. So, you know, I repressed the whole thing because I thought it would make my life much easier, and I tell you, it did not. It made it much harder. But yeah, when did I actually realize that I was trans? And I hate being asked this question because I feel like with a lot of people, there's not usually that eureka, I'm trans moment. A lot of it is just like, oh, so that horrible feeling I've had in my stomach since birth, that's what it was? I discovered what being trans and what being non-binary was maybe when I was like 14. I went on the internet, as you know, other people do, as you know. And before you start saying it, no, the internet did not trans me. I had these feelings before I knew what Google was. I found out what being non-binary was when I was 14, and for a little amount of time, I identified as non-binary because the idea of identifying as a man and coming out and being like, ha, I know I'm a little girl, but I'm a man, that really scared me. So I was non-binary for a little bit, and during that non-binary phase, whatever it was, I came out to my mum. I had already come out to my internet friends, but they were all LGBTs. They were the L's, the G's, the B's, the T's. That was the easiest coming out ever, because I was just like, hey guys, I'm this. And they were like, yeah, I know. But no, the first, like, major person in my life that I came out to was my mother. And how did I do that, you ask? Did you write a nice little poem? You send a letter? No, I sent her the Wikipedia link to what non-binary was from Wikipedia. I sent her that message on Facebook Messenger, and she messaged back and was like, is this you? And I'm like, yeah, I think so. And she was like, okay, love you regardless. Are you sure you're not a boy? Are you sure you're not just a guy? She was right. Mothers always know best. But regardless, my mother was the first person that I came out to. And she made it a lot easier for me because she knew I was a gigantic, massive pussy. And I was never gonna come out to anybody else in real life via message. Nothing. I would never do that. So she took the liberty of calling up my brother, being like, by the way, trans. And my brother was like, yeah, obviously, duh, that's fine, I don't care, love you, whatever. And then he did the honors of telling my dad because I was scared of doing that. And my dad was like, yeah, obviously, not a big deal, kind of obvious. And so that was that. That was pretty easy. But I didn't ask anybody to call me Noah or to use he, him pronouns because, you know, I was not out at school. I was not out to anybody else at my life, and I just wanted them to know. There's this fun story that I remember every single time I think about coming out to my dad. I had short hair my whole life, looked like a boy a whole life. There were a few years where I grew my hair out. I started wearing girls' clothes because people told me to wear specifically these clothes. And it got to a point where I was like, this is just making me more miserable. I'm gonna cut my hair off. And I remember going to my dad and being like, Dad, do you think I would look weird and like a boy if I cut off my hair? And he said, well, I don't think you really look like a girl anyway. So that was just a fun moment. But yeah, at this point in my life, August 2017, I was only out to my internet friends. I was out to my mom, my dad, my brother, and I was out to a few people from school. The most notable one was my roommate. I went to a boarding school, by the way, a naval boarding school. My roommate of 5 years, a week before we finished school, came up to me and was like, so you like men, right? You like boys. And at this point, I was so tired of people thinking I was a lesbian. I was like, yes, I love men. And she was like, okay, so you like boys. If you got a boyfriend, would you be his boyfriend or his girlfriend? I was like, she knows. She knows. So thank you, Sasha, for doing that, because it would have been much harder to come out had you not done that. But yeah, August 2017, now was the time. I had finished school, I had left, we had been a few weeks from school, and, you know, it was time. So, I made a big Facebook post, just for a little bit of context, and why I didn't come out at school. I feel like I don't need to explain, but I feel like I do, because some people don't get it. As I said, I went to a naval boarding school. It was not the place to come out. There were 2 people that were out at my school, and they were out as gay, and neither of them made the choice to come out. They were outed by other people, and, you know, that was very unfortunate. My school was heavily gendered. It wasn't a single-sex school, but it was single-sex boarding houses. So I grew up in an all-girls boarding house, and my school had a lot of traditions. They liked tradition, they loved tradition, and they hated anything outside of it. So, like, a few things that happened, for example, we would have school dinners multiple times a year, where they'd give us food, and we would have to dance and act like Tories. And, of course, there was a dress code. Girls had to wear dresses, boys had to wear suits. The usual day-to-day dress code was insane. It was a naval school, so we wore naval uniforms, so, like, I get it. But the boys and girls had very different rules, and I know this is the same in every single school, but will I just say that there were rules about our hair, not just in terms of having natural hair colors, but girls had to tie all their hair back. They couldn't have any straggly bits here. Boys couldn't shave the sides of their head lower than like a 2 or something. They were like regulating the length of the shaved side at my school. But everything was incredibly gendered, and not gonna lie, the majority of the kids at my school were conservative. So not only were we living in a conservative establishment, where of course there'd be tradition, but I was also surrounded by kids that, like, of all people at that time, they are not the ones to understand being LGBT. So I had to wait until I finished school to come out, because I knew I would not be safe. I would probably be hate crime a little bit. I know for a fact my school would have no clue what to do. They would have no clue what to do, and they would not have handled it well. And I know that for a fact. I've been in contact with kids that are a few years below me, and they have not had any good experiences coming out of that school. So anyway, there's your context. Let's get on to the post. What did I say? How did I come out? Contrary to popular belief, I am not actually a lesbian. Very much into dudes. We have a very strong opener. And there was a reason for this, and I'm sure a lot of people that were in my position can understand. Because I was a girl, and I had short hair, and I dressed like a boy, people thought I was a lesbian. I don't know how many people thought I was a lesbian. I did actually do a poll on my school account on Instagram a few years ago, being like, did you think I was a lesbian when I was at school? Some of them did. And before anyone says anything, no, there's absolutely nothing wrong with being a lesbian. But where my head was at when I wrote this, I was a boy who only liked boys. At this point in my life, I didn't realize that I was attracted to girls, because I was just, there was too much going on. A girl that likes girls is the complete opposite to a boy that likes boys. And I did not enjoy being misunderstood, but people for real thought I was a lesbian, even though I denied it. I literally had a shirtless poster of Tom Daley on my wall. He was shirtless and had abs, and maybe they thought I was compensating for the fact that I knew that people thought I was a lesbian. But no, for real, there was this kid 3 years below me, which, by the way, I'm not a fan of hierarchy, and I don't think it should be normal for, like, younger kids to fear older kids, but, like, this kid 3 years below me came up to me and was like, oh, so you're a lesbian, right? What do you think about this? I was not a lesbian. I was not a lesbian. People seeing me as a lesbian made my dysphoria go off the charts, because if somebody saw me as a lesbian, they're like, oh, that's a girl. Yeah, a little bit masculine, but still very much a girl. It's a bit more complicated than that. But yeah, I'm transgender. To put that straight, I was born as a girl, but I've always felt like a dude inside. That is, like, the most basic way to explain being trans. It feels almost infantilizing. Like, I wouldn't say that now. But, like, I get it. It was 2017, and the people that I was dealing with, they did not know, well, they must have known, but they did not know any LGBT people. I remember I was FaceTiming my friend once in my boarding house, and a girl came in the room, and she was like, oh my god, is that a gay person? I've never met a gay person before. I had to make this as base level as possible. Okay? Probably hasn't come as a shock to most of you, but I thought I should probably let everybody know before they get confused. So this is the thing. I have seen a lot of people on Facebook, on Instagram, on social media, not come out as trans, but just change their name to a name that fits the gender that they identify as, but not the one that they were born as, and like they just don't tell anybody about it, that would make my anxiety insane. Like, I can't imagine being like, oh yeah, by the way, it's Noah. I did not want people asking questions. But yeah, people would have been confused if I just changed my name, but I was also planning on starting testosterone and getting top surgery, so I was definitely gonna look a little bit different to how they remember me being. It's not something that I chose, it's just something that's always been there, and if I could do anything about it to get rid of it, I would, but I can't. And that's really sad. And I get it, that is absolutely how I felt. Being trans to me was literally like a curse. It felt like the worst thing that could possibly happen to me because I spent every living moment in an insane amount of discomfort. Like, the older I got, the longer I went without coming out to people, the longer I went knowing who I was and knowing what I needed to do in order for me to be comfortable. The longer I went knowing that and doing nothing about it, it just drove me insane. Literally the only thing that kept me going throughout the last few years of my school life was the fact that I knew that when I finished school, I could come out and I could medically transition and I could not have to live with boobies and, you know, a lot of other stuff. But that is absolutely how I felt. Like, if I could change being trans, I would get rid of it. It was like having an extra limb. I was like, if I can chop it off, I'll do it. And what I'm about to say would bother the person that was writing this coming out post so much. But if I could get rid of being trans now, I wouldn't. Just because I'm at a point in my life where I'm like, look, being trans doesn't really impact me that much. I don't think about it unless I go on the internet or I read the news, which is a lot. But, you know, in terms of how I feel about myself, it's not something that I think about. I have an established life now. I've been with the same person for 5 years. I have the friend group that I have. I do what I do, and getting rid of being trans, like, that, I would just be a completely different person. And I kind of like who I am right now. So, like, I wouldn't change that. That doesn't mean that the dysphoria doesn't suck sometimes, but it's really cool to me that I've gotten to a point in my life where, like, I don't feel like that. And I know a lot of people that are watching this will absolutely feel like that. I completely get where you're coming from. I completely understand that. It won't always be like that, I promise. I also feel like I had to say that in the Facebook post because I was super worried about what people from my school would think. They were not the type of people, as I said, to know an LGBT person. And I remember the conversations people had around me. I remember what they said about gay people. I remember what they said about trans people. They thought they were triggered snowflakes. They thought they were crazy people. They thought they'd been indoctrinated by the internet. And I wanted to make it clear that if I could change this undesirable part of me, because that's how I felt it was, I would do it. Like, I'm on your side. Like, I know you want to get rid of trans people. I want to get rid of my transness too. Unfortunately, it's a real thing. Unfortunately, it's a real thing. And I hadn't told anybody at school because, let's be honest, name of school probably isn't the best place to come out. As I said, the only kids at my school that were out were outed. They weren't treated well. And you know what? I'm not naming any names, but I have actually been in contact with a few kids from the years below me because they know that I'm trans and they were like, hey, how the hell did you survive school? And I've heard terrible stories about what goes on at the school that I was at. A member of staff literally told a kid that yes, they would go to hell if they came out, or if they were who they said they were, which is just an insane thing for a teacher to say to a child. But yeah, I don't think anybody that went to my school would disagree that it wasn't the most accepting place. There were specific things that were banned. I'm very, very grateful to the mates that have supported me this whole time. Honestly, they're perfect. Still feel the same way. I'm not saying this to get attention or anything, and I'm not like this because of the internet's influence, as some people may have expected. Yeah, I was super worried that people would think that I was doing this for attention. Looking back, they would have been insane to think that. Like, I have always just been the way that I am. I'm gonna go on hormones and eventually I'll have surgery, but don't be worried about me making a sudden decision to change my gender, because it's been something I've thought about my whole life and have been to several appointments and assessments to make sure it's not something that I've made up in my head. Yeah, this is a point in my life where I put a lot of value on what, like, doctors and nurses had to say about transgender people. And I get why I felt like that, because my entire life, I feel like I was the most transgender person ever, and I would see people that had less dysphoria than me coming out and going on hormones and getting surgery, and I was incredibly jealous of them. So if I went to a doctor and they validated how I felt, and they were like, hey, like, here is a true fact, you are literally by definition transgender, it made me feel better about myself. And it also made me feel less crazy. Because if a doctor told me that the way that I was feeling was fine, then it was fine. But yeah, you know, how I feel about it now is that, like, nobody is gonna know how you feel inside more than you do. But yeah, I just wanted people to know that this was legit. Like, I was legit transgendering, and I was doing it in the most legit way possible. And you can't have a problem with it because a doctor said that it was fine. It's fine if you're not gonna accept me for who I am, is it? But I'd prefer if you unfriended me now so I don't have to deal with people who aren't gonna respect me. Kind of setting a boundary there. I mean, like, I did have a few people unfriend me. I'm still not sure who they were. But yeah, I was so apprehensive. If I did this now, if I was coming out now, I'd be like, hey, I'm Noah now. He, him pronouns, please. Nothing else. Bye. I would also very much appreciate it if you called me Noah from now on, because that's a name I've gone by for quite a while now. And that was a lie, because I had gone by Noah, not Noah, because that was a point in my life where I was like, oh, I gotta be different. I gotta change it up. Maybe remove the H. Maybe that makes it a little bit cooler. Noa is how you spell a girl's name, so that's not what I was going for. And like I said earlier, I'm not a girl. Good shout, Noah. So using he, him pronouns would be good. That would be good. I get why I was like this. I get why I was apprehensive. It's just sad reading it. I'm not expecting anybody to get it straight away because that's unreasonable, but it's always good to try. So yeah, sorry for not saying anything earlier. If you have any questions, I'm guessing you do, please message me and ask them. I'm not gonna get offended. So that was my coming out post. I still remember those feelings I felt at that point in my life. I was very uncomfortable. My entire life revolved around being trans. But yeah, the response was all positive. There were a few people, and I don't understand how they managed this, but they would be like, oh, congratulations, birth name. Proud of you. They didn't mean it in a bad way, but they just, I don't know how they did that. I had to delete the comment. As I said, lost a few Facebook friends, don't care about that. I also got some really nice messages from people that I wasn't even friends with that were just like, hey, if I ever made you uncomfortable, if I ever made you feel a type of way about that, I'm sorry. That was really nice. And finally, I had somebody that copied my coming out post word for word, but just added in their information, which at the time, I was really pissed off by. But if you want to do that, if you want to use my coming out post, go ahead. Probably don't. But yeah, that's the end of the video. How did you come out? What did you do? Want to tell me how you did that? Have a good day or don't. See you later, losers. Goodbye. If you're staying... Is the gap in my teeth obvious? Stayers? Is it obvious? They shaved between my teeth for the Invisalign, but I can't stop looking at it.